It's time to start doing some record predictions. We are back again on the Thicc podcast, and today we are going to start our series of predicting how each team is going to finish their 2025 season. And we'll be starting with the worst division in football, the bottom of the barrel, the lowest of the low, the AFC South. Now, I know we've got some passionate Colts, Jaguars, Texans fans in our audience, a singular passionate Titans fan who probably doesn't watch this on YouTube, but I know the fan bases are fired up. I know they love their teams. I know everybody is optimistic about their 2025 season. You should really temper your expectations. I'm setting the bar nice and high here for the first video in our series. The AFC South is a bad division. It's not going to have a dominant team in it. The Texans, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans are not impressive organizations. One of them has to win, but one of them might not have a winning record. So let's get right into this. Starting things up, I'll let you go first, Tristan. Shall we talk about the Titans, the Colts, or the Jaguars first? We know what we're talking about last.
I think the bottom of the barrel is the Titans, and I think any of this could be said for all of these teams. If they get their 1, 2, or 3 big question marks to click and they answer those questions from last season, there's potential they could win the division just because of how lackluster the rest of the division is. And a few of these teams are going to falter and likely be picking in the top 5, certainly in the top 10 next season. The reason I have the Titans at the bottom of the division is that while, of course, they drafted Cam Ward, and he could wind up being that guy, the receiver room, just not all that special. Offensive line, they put a lot of money into it, but they have yet to prove that they can gel as a unit to protect Cam Ward. Tony Pollard at running back, okay. Defense was very solid last year. What will it be in year 2? But Brian Callahan, not a proven head coach by any means. He's coming off coaching the worst team in the NFL. Cam Ward hasn't taken a snap yet. And when you just look at their roster overall, not all that special. I think the most wins I could see them getting is 7 looking at their schedule. I think their floor is at 3. I have them going 5-12, and I think they're going to finish last in the AFC South.
I don't agree with you. I appreciate what you're saying. I get the concept, but it's just wrong. Looking at the Titans roster, they on paper have the best offensive line in the division. That is not saying much, but I like Skoronski. I think J.C. Latham showed a lot of good play towards the back half of the year. Dan Moore, quality player, decent center position. The offensive skill players are not fantastic, but they're young. Cam Ward should be an upgrade over Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, and their defense was one of the best in terms of yards per game allowed in 2024 and didn't really lose a lot of pieces. That unit's only going to get better. The O-line's going to bolster them some wins, but rookie quarterback, bad offensive play calling, in my opinion. Weak wide receivers, that is going to be what holds them back. And their out-of-conference schedule is not the easiest. Got to go play the Rams, the Broncos, the Chargers. It's not a walk in the park for the Titans, but I don't think they'll finish last in the division. I think they win 7 games. I think there's a clear improvement. I think there's direction in the organization for the first time in a few years, and Tennessee feels all right sauntering into 2026. Maybe without a top 10 pick for once. I am more optimistic about the O-line than you are, though. Tony Pollard could be a good running back. We just don't know what he'd look like with a competently blocked system, because even his final year in Dallas, that O-line was kind of starting to fall off. Tyron Smith was getting old. Zach Martin was getting old. Tyler Smith had not fully realized his eliteness yet. So Pollard behind a good offensive line could be a sneaky good running game. Quality defense, that'll win you some games.
I mean, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, they're not a bad pairing, but they're certainly not one of the greatest running back pairings in the NFL.
Yeah, I know, but 90% of a running back's production comes from their offensive line, so it matters less about them as opposed to who's in front of them. They play in the AFC South, which probably bolsters them by 1 or 2 wins. It's still not a good roster. The offensive line in a vacuum may be average if you're being optimistic, but average is still a massive upgrade over what they were in 2024. Unfortunately, they will be without Will Levis for the season, which could be detrimental if Cam Ward goes down, but if Ward is not on the field, season's over anyway.
So just to confirm, you have them with 7 wins?
7 wins, not last place in the division.
Who do you have in last place?
Oh, I've got the Indianapolis Colts as the worst team in the AFC South. And the Colts are rolling into the season. It feels funny to say, rolling into the season with Daniel Jones as their projected Week 1 starter. Maybe Richardson bounces back from the shoulder, is able to snatch the starting job from him, but the fact we're even having this conversation is a sign of extreme dysfunction within the quarterback room. If Richardson is on the field, there is no rhythm in the passing attack. It is just long bombs to receivers who are probably going to drop the ball, misplaced throws in the short yardage game, and an effective running game which will be without its most effective members, the interior offensive line. The Colts lost Will Fries. They lost Kelly in free agency, both to the Minnesota Vikings. That was what made this Colts offense work. Having a great interior offensive line is what let this team be as effective as they were on the ground in 2024. The reason Anthony Richardson had a winning record as a starter last season is because the Colts would just pound games out with Jonathan Taylor and himself behind that offensive line. Get some tough yards, let their defense force a turnover, maybe hinder the offense a little bit, do something to slow the game down and make it a low-scoring affair. That is no longer an option. This team will not be one of the most effective running teams in the NFL anymore. Their tackle play has never been special, but it could get by. Now there's going to be more of an emphasis on that. Richardson is going to have to drop back to pass more on second and third and longs, and it's just going to make everything look a lot worse. I will say I think their defense got a little bit better, particularly the back end of it, but you can only improve so much. Their passing defense was a joke in 2024, even with the additions of Bynum and is Charvarius Ward with the 49ers. It's not going to change all that much. The pass rush is still not great on the outside. Assuming they can get Latu on the field this year, maybe that changes, but I kind of think DeForest Buckner's starting to age out of his prime. Kwity Paye is always a C+, B- type starter. Never someone who's going to break a game open for you. And there's just too much to chance there. I think the Colts go 6-11. I think they finish last place in the division. And if Richardson can work things out, my opinion on the Colts changes completely, but I just have no faith in him at this point. If it's Daniel Jones under center, come on, we know it's going to happen.
What do you have the record being?
6-11.
So you think the worst division in football is going to have their worst team at only 6-11?
Yes, but you will see why I think it's the worst division in football later in the list.
Okay, well, they were being optimistic for the bottom of the worst division in football. But I think the defense, it's going to be hard to be much worse than they were last year. They weren't a very solid defense in the slightest, and they could be a very interesting team when you just look at their skill positions. Elite tight end prospect coming in from the draft, very deep wide receiver room when it just comes to talent. They have a top 10, potentially top 5 running back. Offensive line, even with the losses, it should still be solid to okay. So they have the pieces on the offensive side of the ball, but the quarterback room, the quarterback situation is a massive question mark. Whether it is Daniel Jones throwing passes to your deep wide receiver room and your elite tight end, or it is Anthony Richardson throwing passes, that is not something for your fan base to be excited about. That is not something for your coaching staff to be excited about. And this is a coaching staff and front office that is desperate to win right now and prove that they can get it done, given the turnover that we've had in ownership due to unfortunate circumstances. So I have the Colts also going 6-11. Their schedule isn't overly difficult. Like the rest of their division, they don't play in the best division in the NFL. Maybe they get a win against the Falcons in Germany. They're playing overseas there.
The Falcons are going to run over this team in Germany, man. What are we talking about? Bijan's going for a crisp 170 on the ground on that German soccer field. Give me a break. They're not getting a win over the Falcons.
And if Shane Steichen strikes gold with either of these quarterbacks, I could certainly see them doing better. I just don't think that's going to happen. I also have them at 6-11.
I want to circle back to the wide receiving room and the tight end room here a little bit. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, they're kind of a slightly upgraded version of what the Packers have. Just a bunch of 2s and 3s out there. And Pittman's diminished. Downs had drop issues. Pierce, only real ineffective deep ball player. I don't even know if it's that good of a room. Like, if you were ranking all the wide receiver rooms in the NFL based off actual talent as opposed to, oh, it's just deep, it's got 4 comparable guys, where do you put the Colts? Are they a top half wide receiver room? Are you really going to put them above any team in the I don't know. This is not that good of a wide receiver room. And with Tyler Warren, it is very presumptive to say he is an elite tight end already. His issue in college, not a ton of separation, not fantastic by the numbers in contested catch situations. You're going to have to cram the ball in a window to him to get it there, and Richardson just cannot do that. So Tyler Warren could be as elite with the ball in his hands as he wants. I don't think he's going to be effectively used by the Colts.
That's fair to say. And I said elite tight end prospect. I did not say elite
tight
end.
No, you said an
right
elite
now.
tight end at some point in there. There was definitely an elite tight end in there.
Yeah, prospect.
No, devoid of prospect. It was just a solo hanging elite tight end.
I'm pretty sure that's not what I said, but if you want me to re-clarify, that's what I meant.
All right, run the All-22 tape on that. We'll see where the elite is.
Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, he's back healthy. Brian Thomas exploded onto the scene last year. They have the most exciting rookie in the draft class with Travis Hunter entering or joining the team. And I'm excited to see what Trevor Lawrence can do with Brian Thomas over a complete season. They did not get to finish last year due to all all of Trevor Lawrence's injuries, and I think Brian Thomas could be in for a massive sophomore year. But when it comes down to it, the Jaguars had one of the worst passing defenses in football last year, and I just don't think bringing in Travis Hunter, who's going to be playing on both sides of the ball, is going to do that much right away to change that drastically from the worst to first, from worst or even close to top half of the league passing defense. Offense, you hope he can add a different element to that with the different talents he offers. I think there's potential for him to complement Brian Thomas in a really nice way, but they just have some really nice pieces, and I don't think they're a complete team. Offensive line, still not all that great. Defense, I think there's still a lot to be desired in the secondary, and I have them going 7-10.
Bringing in Travis Hunter in a vacuum does not fix the passing defense. Bringing in Travis Hunter, Eric Murray, and Jordan Lewis kind of does when you factor in the Jaguars have two elite edge players who can just create a ton of pressure outside. They now have four legitimate NFL players in that secondary, which is just not something you could say about the team in 2024. Travis Hunter by himself wouldn't fix it, but I think they have addressed it about as well as they can in free agency. They did get one of the marquee guys, but they spent their money elsewhere, namely on the interior of that offensive line. And I think Walker Little is his name, the left tackle who took over for Cam Robinson last year, played pretty well in the spot he had. They spent a combined $50 million on a new guard and center, which should greatly improve that unit. And you look at the team, you think, okay, what wins you games in the modern NFL? It's the ability to sling the ball around on weaker secondaries. There are weaker secondaries in their division. There are teams who are susceptible to get air raid. You look at the numbers Trevor Lawrence put up against the AFC South when he was healthy, excluding the Houston Texans who just destroyed him with their pass rush. Not a bad performance by any stretch of the imagination. Now, I almost did what you did and called Travis Hunter an elite number 2 wide receiver. An elite rookie prospect wide receiver as his number 2. A top 10, maybe top 5 guy in Brian Thomas going into year 2. And some quality, more consistent pieces in the tight end and wide receiver 3 room. Maybe not an Evan Ingram-esque guy who can go get you 800, 900 yards, but someone who's going to be a better blocker, who's going to get open close to the 6, get you some tough yardage. I think both the passing offense and the passing defense are going to be transformed from what they were in 2024. This team is going to look a lot better through the air. Now, on the ground, I still have very little faith in their running back rotation. If Tank Bigsby takes the next step and really is the guy, maybe I'll change my opinion on that, but not a big Travis Etienne guy. And their run defense, they don't have great linebackers, and the interior of their defensive line is still pretty iffy to me. So I think that is where they're going to lose games. That is where teams are really going to capitalize on them. But they're going to be able to score points. They're going to be able to hinder comebacks through the air. I think that'll be enough to give them the... Yeah, I'll leap. I'll be bold. That'll be enough to get them the division. It's not going to be enough to get him a winning record, though. I think the Jaguars go 8-9 and win the AFC South, secure themselves the 4 seed in the AFC. Not a good team? Maybe. A very mediocre team? Certainly.
I don't see them winning the division.
Yeah, of course you don't, because you are propagandized by big quarterback and big defensive end over there in the Texans. Me putting them as the winners of the division is a much larger indictment of the team we are going to talk about next than it is praise for them. I think they are clearly going to be better if Lawrence is on the field, and I think they'll be fun to watch, if not good. If they can really hammer out that offensive line, sort out all the issues in their run game next offseason, then I think we get into that territory of, okay, is this an 11-12 win team who can potentially make a deep playoff run? They're not there yet, but they're clearly going the right direction.
If Etienne can return to what he was 2 years ago and Bigsby takes another step, that will certainly help their offense and game plan and game flow significantly with what they're able to offer in the run game. But I think losing Evan Ingram is an underrated piece of their offseason that could greatly affect their passing attack. It's going to put a slightly more pressure on Travis Hunter because he is slotted as really the clear-cut second option in the passing game behind Brian Thomas.
What role was Evan Ingram going to have in this Jaguars offense, though? He can't block. He's a slot receiver, basically. He is a worse version of what Brock Bowers was last year for the Raiders. And Travis Hunter is primarily going to be lined up in that slot, in my opinion. If he's not there, hey, might as well stick Brian Thomas in there and see what you can get from that. He had no role in this team. I get why they let him go. He was not worth paying for what they're trying to do moving forward. So I don't think that's a loss by any stretch of the imagination. Compare that to Travis Hunter, the upside he has as a wide receiver, his otherworldly hands, his physical gifts. Yeah, they're perfectly fine letting him go. They would rather get the ball in Hunter's hands than Ingram's.
They lost something by not having him on the team this year, although he did struggle with injuries last year, so I could see why they would move off of him. But I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's a little
You think
bit
their
of a
passing
loss.
attack's going to be worse?
I don't think it's going to. It's not like losing Brian Thomas or losing a great receiver, but you're losing someone who's a quality player.
Speaking of quality players, there is not a single one to be found on the Houston Texans offensive line. As things stand now, they're going to have Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Jake Andrews, Titus Howard, and Blake Fisher starting for their team. Not a single one of those guys would start for a good offensive line in the NFL. This is one of the worst units in football. Initially, I said, okay, I get why you're moving off Laramie Tunsil. He's getting overpaid. He wasn't a good run blocker, committed a ton of penalties. Fine. Still an elite pass protector. To move off of him to get draft picks and then do nothing with those picks to address your biggest weakness blows my mind. To take C.J. Stroud, a young quarterback who has largely been devoid of injuries but has been banged up because you just cannot protect him, and stick him behind this unit when he's still on a rookie contract and cheap is organizational malpractice. Yeah, I get you paid Stingley. I get you paid Daniil Hunter. Good for you. Paid Nico Collins on a very team-friendly contract. This is just a pathetically constructed offensive line, which is so bad it is going to cap this team's win total. Maybe you think they win one or two more games not protecting and sneak into the playoffs as a 4 seed, and C.J. Stroud's able to will them to another miraculous playoff win for the 3rd year in a row. But I don't care if you got Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Christian Kirk. If you get all those guys on the field together, it won't matter because you are not going to be able to get C.J. Stroud upright for 2 seconds to throw them the ball. That alone kills me about this Texans team. They could have easily picked offensive linemen with their 2nd-round picks. They could have easily targeted that unit in free agency, but they just didn't. They just neglected the most important position group on the field, and now they are going to have to pay for it. I cannot imagine this offense being overly effective in any area. Joe Mixon's a very good running back. Powerful, physical runner. He's going to be getting hit in the backfield by defensive tackles and linebackers every single play. Nico Collins can get open against anyone deep. He's not going to have time to get open against anyone deep unless C.J. Stroud's throwing 50-yard rainbows to him every play because Stroud will be on the ground that quickly. Defensively, I think they're a great team. I think Will Anderson's one of the 3 best edge players in the NFL. Daniil Hunter's awesome. Their secondary is awesome. Got multiple elite players there too. Linebackers a little bit underrated. Great unit. Going to win some low-scoring games because of how good their defense is. But that offensive line is just so pathetic. I cannot imagine them beating a competent team with a pass rush. I think the Jaguars will pick them off at least once and maybe even sweep them just because Joshua Hines-Allen and Walker have Stroud on his back every single play. It is such a frustrating thing for me to watch this team go about their roster construction. I have no faith in this team, no optimism. It wouldn't shock me if they wound up losing the division, and I just kind of hope C.J. Stroud can stay healthy behind this unit. That should be the end goal of the season. Not a Super Bowl, not a deep playoff run. C.J. Stroud's ligaments remain intact.
I agree with you on a lot of points when it comes to the Texans roster construction and how they've gone about things. I don't like what offensive line they're putting in front of C.J. Stroud. When it comes down to making a record prediction and the Texans that we're going to see this year, when it comes to their roster construction, it's very similar to the Texans that we saw last year, where their high-end talent was able to squeak them out some wins against teams that didn't have the same high-end talent or the same positions figured out, and they lost some games they probably should have won because of their weaknesses along the offensive line. So when they're playing in the AFC South, that is a really bad division. They have the best quarterback in the division. They have a top 10 receiver in Nico Collins. They have Joe Mixon, who's in the top 10 running back conversation. And they have 2 elite edge rushers who get after the quarterback. That is going to help you win some games that you probably shouldn't win because of some deficiencies the Texans have along the offensive line. So given that they're so strong on the edge against the pass, and they have Daniil Hunter, they have Will Anderson, and then they have a very good quarterback and a very good wide receiver and some other quality talented pieces across their team, they're just the more put together team than the other teams in their division. They have the privilege of playing in a weak division, and I think they'll still be able to squeak out 10 wins, get to 10-7 because of the division that they play in. So I don't think it's going to be like a 10 wins where you're like, wow, that's a really good put together Texans team. They grind out some wins against a really hard schedule, but they have enough talent to get it done and win the division.
Yeah, they've also got the privilege of playing the first place schedule. Let's just look at the first 5-6 weeks of the season for them. Start off with the Rams week 1. That front 7 will tear them apart. Loss. Buccaneers week 2. Same thing. Buccaneers front 7, Buccaneers interior defensive line destroys C.J. Stroud. Loss. Week 3, they go to Jacksonville. I think the Jaguars split the series with them because their O-line is so much better than the Texans and they can actually generate a high-level pass rush. Let's say that's the loss. The Jaguars went home. They'll beat the Jaguars when they come to Houston. Loss. Week 4, Titans. Probably win that game, but with Devondre Sweat and Josh Simmons, you never know. There's a threat for that, but I'll give you that win, sure. And then they play the Ravens in Week 5. Loss. They're rolling into their bye week with a record of 1-4. They're going to dig themselves a hole with how hard this schedule is, and how bad their O-line is. They will be fighting to get out. And it's not like their games after the bye are so much easier. They got to go play in Seattle, who has a really high-level passing defense. That's probably a loss. They got to play the 49ers. That is a big question mark. Nobody knows how good the 49ers or how healthy the 49ers are going to be. And then they got to play the Broncos in Week 9, who are just going to destroy them defensively. The Broncos could score 6 points that game and would probably double up what the Texans put out. So you look at the schedule, look at how big of a hole they can get themselves in early. I could see abandon all hope territory on the season being in play by Week 8, Week 9.
You could make an abandon all hope argument for all 4 of these AFC South teams.
Yeah, again, that's
really
why I got
wrong.
one of them going 8-9 and winning the division.
I think you could say that for quite a few teams, and I'm being optimistic because...
By the way, things don't get better. They play the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Chargers.
It sounds like you're talking yourself into a 2-win season.
I'm not talking myself into that, but it's going to be rough. They're going to be in an uphill battle a lot of games because of who they have decided to build their team around. It's a poorly managed roster.
To recap my record predictions for the AFC South, I have the Titans at the bottom, 5-12, Colts 6-11, coming in third, Jaguars 7-10, and I have the Texans on top of the division at 10-7.
Yeah, I'll call a slight audible. I'll bump them down a game so there's no confusion. I'll have the Colts going 5-12 thanks to their terrible quarterback play. I'll have the Titans looking optimistic, feeling plucky with 7 wins. A clear improvement on the season. Then I've got the Jaguars and the Texans fighting it out with an 8-9 record apiece, with ultimately the Jaguars winning the division and sneaking into that 4 seed in the worst division in football.
And that has been our AFC South predictions. Stay tuned for the rest of our record predictions heading into the 2025 NFL season. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.